Chris Chan, Sonichu. This is a man who has been deeply troubled and disturbed. Also known as Christopher Weston Chandler, he is, in fact, one of the most documented people on Earth, and yet most people don't know much about him. And, okay, most people really do not know the rise, the fall, and the decline of how he went from being a beloved person, on the internet, to someone so depraved in depravity and degeneracy to the point where nobody wants to interact with him. Early life and education. Chris Chan was an autistic kid who became nonverbal after a traumatic experience with his babysitter, okay? But he overcome that after talking to an animatronic bear at a mall. Okay, this is a true story, by the way. Okay, this is 100% true. Okay, who misnamed him, and that's why instead of being Christopher Weston Chandler, he is Christian Weston Chandler. He legally changed his name. Okay, and after this, he went to elementary school. Where nothing really happened. Okay, but the interesting part is once you get into high school. Okay, because that's when Chris Chan would really start to blossom into the man he is today. Okay? In a school art project, he would create the beloved mascot known as Sonichu that we would know today and beloved today. Okay? Also in high school, he would meet a group of girls that he would call his gal pals. Okay? However, it was most likely paid off by his dad to hang out with him, as none of his friendships lasted outside of school except for like one birthday party, and that was it. Okay? So, after Chris Chan gets out of high school, he feasibly becomes extremely depressed as he has no friends and no life. Okay? And his dog died. That's interesting to note there too. But he is going to community college, and that's when he really will start to become the sexual predator we know him today. Love life and college dating. Now, your love life could be a pretty intimate thing, okay? And it's something pretty personal, You find the right girl, and you love her. Okay, however, for Chris Chan, this was not the thing, okay? Most girls didn't notice him or thought he smelled like shit and was really weird. So instead of asking them up front, he would instead make signs known as the attraction signs, okay? Where he would write down that he was a single white male looking for a boyfriend-free girl, okay? And would hang those up around his college campus, okay? After that, the Dean of Administrations would have Chris Chan banned from making attraction signs and putting them up in his college, where he would then put them up in malls and other locations such as that. It's interesting to note here as well that around this time period, he made the first ever issue of Sonichu, okay? Where on the cover art, he refers to Sonichu as his son or something, okay? But this is never brought upwards again. And before I get into Sonichu, I would just like to say that most of the stories in Sonichu's are a rehash of what happened to him IRL, but completely dramatized. And instead of him, it's Sonichu, okay? And he'd also start wearing a medallion of the Sonichu character, okay, out in public because he thought it would give him superpowers or something. After all of this, however, he still had zero dates or anything, and this is when people on the internet really started picking up on the fact about his existence and who he was. The Golden Age. The Golden Age of Chris Chan has to be studied, okay? This has to be the most frisky period of his history, okay? This is when the story pops off, okay? Chris Chan would no longer be some random autistic folk legend of a guy. He would be mainstream on the internet, and people would laugh and gawk at him, okay? It all started with people trying to pretend that they were women online, okay? And noticing that he had this thing known as Sonichu, his little online webcomic, and they would fuck around with him, okay, until he'd get like extremely pissed off, and they realized how simple it was to piss this guy off, okay. Eventually, the trolls got worse, okay, and Chris Chan just was pissed off all the time, and they kept banning his YouTube channel, okay, and eventually they threatened to like report his house to the sanitary like department of North Carolina, and his dad crashes out on him. Funniest shit ever, okay, but around this time period, we'll also start seeing this group of people known as the Miscreants, okay, which was the main group of trolls against Chris Chan, okay. His life of being a single horny bastard had become a Saturday morning cartoon of sorts, okay, as he was put on these online cartoonish hijinks. Note at the time period, he was talking to what he thought was a 20-year-old woman who was secretly a 13-year-old boy. That is oddly important to the story. Okay, actually, I think that might actually come before the Miscreants. They also made him drive to Ohio at one point. I remember that. Um, but this was wacky and weird. Okay, they got so many weird clips of him doing stuff. Okay, to the point where it became like a challenge to see how far you could push this strange dude into doing things. There's multiple videos of him confessing to be gay while not confessing to be gay because of something about somebody online. Okay, but I think the most notorious person to ever troll Chris Chan had got to be Liquid Chris, okay? Going off the Metal Gear Solid series, okay, where there's Liquid Snake and Solid Snake, okay, they would start to refer to this one guy as Liquid Chris because he was the fake Chris Chan, but they were gaslighting the real Chris Chan into believing he was the fake Chris Chan, okay? This ended up going into some wacky hijinks, including the Miscreants, okay? And eventually it ended up in a thing called the Sing Star Challenge, where Chris Chan, oh yeah, mind you, by the way, Chris Chan has a history of singing, okay, but it's always bad as he entered a Parappa the Rappa rap contest, okay, where he lost, okay, but that's what really made him infamous, okay, but now he's doing this thing called the Sing Star Challenge, where both parties would elect 3 judges, okay, and whoever sang better would be elected as the real Chris Chan. Needless to say, he lost. He lost. Even though he's the real deal. He lost. That's so fucking stupid. Okay, and they just get this guy to do all sorts of nasty stuff too. Like eventually, it got so bad to the point where one of the trolls wasn't actually a troll and was telling Chris Chan that he had to give up on his dream of Sonichu, okay, and actually pursue a real job and try to get a real girlfriend because everybody he's meeting online has been a fake person, okay. But slipping through the cracks of this twisted and humorous reality, we would see the dark side, the downfall of Chris Chan. Christian Weston Chandler was going to go through his third name change in his life, as little did he know, for being a homophobic, racist, and misogynist piece of shit, he was secretly gay the whole time, okay? Not only that, okay, he would go out and call himself, so there's a type of people called tomboys, okay, which are women that dress like men, so he'd call himself a tom girl for some reason, okay, and would sometimes go out in public in a sports bra that would just say "want woman" for some reason, okay, and this was strange, okay, because this was a stark contrast to the man the internet beloved, to a figure that everybody could look up and see him and go, "Holy shit, it's that bastard," and the internet would keep making fun of him, but as he slowly progressed, it got more and more sad. Until one day, he was talking to a random girl online, I'm pretty sure it was a girl, okay, who, under zero pressure, by the way, he just felt like sharing this, admitted to, sexually assaulting his mother for the last 4 years while she had dementia and didn't remember it. At that point, the whole internet lost respect for Chris Chan. At that point, he stopped becoming the lovable laughingstock that everybody knew and laughed at, and started to become a degenerate. He was already a degenerate by the time he was gone out of high school, but at this point, it had gotten so bad that people had just stopped fucking with him anymore. Nobody wanted to fuck with him anymore. They did record his arrest, and they did fuck around with him a bit, okay? Because he was also talking about, like, at this point, he probably was a paranoid schizophrenic too, because he was talking about something called the Merge, okay? And the Merge was this thing where the Sonichu universe would collide with the real universe, but, needless to say, that never fucking happened, okay? But the hijinks were all over. The whimsical, wacky, cartoonish mishaps with the miscreants, Liquid Chris, it's all over. It's gone. You can observe the christory, but you can't make it anymore. It's so far off and depressing to the point where looking back at him, you would think he was a stand-up citizen looking at him today. Oh yeah, and there was like a rumor that he got somebody pregnant, but that was like disclosed as false, which thank God, because if Chris Shan ever had a child, that would be the birth of the Antichrist. That would literally be the Antichrist. My thoughts and conclusions on Chris Chan. I find the story extremely humorous at the start, and it gives me a great chuckle and a pleasure to laugh at. But the more you go deep into it, the sadder it gets. Even during the golden era, it was still depressing, as people just didn't talk to him in real life, and he more and more became dependent on these trolls for social interactions after his dad passed away. Okay? And it's a depressing story, really. Okay? And it's only made funny by the situations and hijinks they had this man get up to. I truly feel sorry for this deeply troubled man. But who's to blame in this situation? He really could have just gotten off the internet and never post again. And I think his life would have been 100 times better.